Everybody knows, there are kidney stones, and these kidney stones, they can get really big. If the urine is very acidic, let's say pH 5 or so, then the kidney has a really hard time. It's great to know what makes the disease worse.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I'm very honored today to be joined by Thomas Weins. He joins us from Santa Barbara Nutrients, all the way over there in the USA. Thomas, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today. The BHP, and then you've obviously got something with these crystals, so tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the crystal story is the second mechanism that we have worked out. As everybody knows, there are kidney stones. People get kidney stones every once in a while. There are kind of three major types of kidney stones. There's calcium oxalate, there's calcium phosphate, and there's uric acid in humans. And these kidney stones, they can get really big, but obviously they don't start out big. They start out microscopically small, as tiny microcrystals that actually form inside the kidney as the urine is produced. And the reason why these microcrystals form is because these very same substances, calcium oxalate, calcium phosphate, and uric acid, tend to be very insoluble. So as the kidney is concentrating the urine and producing the urine, these insoluble compounds tend to precipitate and form crystals. And if that happens in the kidney, that's of course bad news, because these crystals, they look like little pieces of broken glass, and they're just scratch along the kidney tubules, and they can rip the kidney to shreds and cause microscopic injury and so on. So what we had discovered is that these microcrystals that actually in humans, they form day in, day out. We all, pee out millions of these crystals oftentimes. And usually it's harmless. Our kidneys can deal with them. But every once in a while, some of these crystals get stuck in the kidney. And we had asked the question, okay, if they get stuck, what does the kidney do? And what we discovered is something that hopefully will make it into textbooks one of those days. The kidney tubules, they can actually dilate in response to these stuck crystals. So it's like, the plumbing actually gets bigger and you can flush out the crystal that way. Seems like a really great invention. Strangely, that hadn't been known before. Before we found this.
Really? And, so well, congratulations for finding that.
Yeah.
It makes logical sense when you say it. The human body is so amazing. But
right.
Yeah,
for some reason, it hadn't really clicked before. And what we found is that this tubule dilation also goes along with activation of certain signaling pathways in these tubule cells. And there happen to be the same signaling pathways that are also activated in polycystic kidney disease, which is, a disease where these tubules essentially get so big that they form cysts eventually. And what we found is if you take an animal that forms polycystic kidneys and you challenge them with these microcrystals, their cysts they get many more cysts, they get much worse disease. So you can accelerate the disease progression and make it worse. So it's great to know what makes the disease worse, because then we can think of ways of taking that factor away. And that's actually pretty straightforward, in humans. So like I said, calcium oxalate is one component, and oxalate comes primarily from the food. From certain plant foods, spinach is like super high in oxalate,
kale, yeah.
almonds, but also yummy things like dark chocolate and so on. So that's actually a thing. But if somebody happens to eat, dark chocolate by the pounds, they can actually get acute kidney injury because of all the oxalate in there. So you can essentially, if a patient knows that oxalate is bad, they can take it away from their food. And instead of spinach, you eat something else that is much lower in oxalate. The other component is calcium phosphate. And one of the worst sources of phosphate are these inorganic phosphate additives that we have in almost all the processed foods. They have no nutritional value. They're not in there, for our health. They're just in there for food chemistry reasons, right? To make it for the food industry to make their processed food. So there's absolutely no reason to consume those. And if you're aware of it and you have kidney disease, I would say read the food labels and don't buy anything that has added phosphate food additives. So that's the other thing. And then the third thing is the uric acid that can form these microcrystals. And that can also be influenced by a number of things. Number one, you can limit the intake of the precursor for uric acid, which are these purines that are kind of very common in meat, for example.
Yep. Beer.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, okay. And you can, but you can also, the funny thing with uric acid is that it is only insoluble under acidic conditions. So if the urine is very acidic, let's say pH 5 or so, then the kidney has a really hard time excreting all that uric acid, and there's a high risk for these crystals to form. So what you'd want to do is you bring the urine pH back to a much more normal level, to a more neutral level, and you can then antagonize the negative effects of these uric acid crystals, so they essentially don't form that way. So those are kind of the things you can do.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you so much. And if you want to get more information about this, remember to hit subscribe. If you want to know more about what we do, head over to www.kidneycoach.com. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. If you've got any comments, leave them below and I'll make sure I get back to you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.